The Todd Shapiro Show.
Time to hit the button!
On Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
I think we have him on the phone, and become a nice buddy of mine, sort of away from the program. It's always nice to kind of, get to have people's expertise, but also get to know them away from everything. And a family man, and recently had a second child, about 8 weeks away from his first child. They set a record at doing that. And he's a really wonderful guy. And he's a part of Namaste Technologies and their great team there at namastetechnologies.com. Please welcome to the program, Darren Gill. Hey, Darren.
Hey, how's it going, man? Don't know about 8 weeks, but it was close.
How's everything going with the new addition?
The new addition, sleepless nights, but well worth the pain. He's a lot of fun.
Hey, before we talk about anything sort of educational wise in the cannabis space and anything to do with Namaste Technologies, what's that like being? Are you CFO of Namaste Technologies? What's your title exactly?
Chief Strategy Officer.
Okay, Chief Strategy Officer. What's that? I mean, that I always like to talk about sort of inspiration and hard work and really a balance, and you being really a father to two very young children and running, let's be honest, like, you look at the market cap, like a multi-million-dollar company. Is that difficult at times, and what advice would you give to people?
Honestly, I mean, I think it's got to be something you enjoy doing, right? For me, the industry's been a passion. I've been involved for several years. Namaste, it was a company that I got very, very passionate about from the day I met one of the founders. I loved the vision and the direction they're going. And it's one of those, I enjoy waking up in the morning, so it's not like a job, you know what I mean? It's something I enjoy getting to go do, and every day is a challenge. We've had a lot of ups and downs, but I think when you've got a real passion for it, it doesn't feel like work anymore.
It's a nice way to put it. Make sure that people find something that they love to do. And obviously you also love being a parent, so you have a passion for that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I get fortunate enough where, being a technology company, we employ a lot of things that allow us to kind of do distance away from office work. So I get to do, at least I try to do a day a week at home, where I get to also enjoy being around the kids, and, weekends definitely try my best to disconnect. I think as many cannabis and general executives will appreciate, especially in 2019 where you have electronic leashes all around you. It's always hard to not be guilty of picking up the phone and just checking that one extra email or shooting that one extra text. But I think it's really important to take time for yourself, take time for the family, unplug. And, it's not about how many hours you're working. It's about how productive you are when you're working. So.
Well said. Bilal, don't listen to him too much, though, because I want you working as many hours as possible, not having any excuses.
Yes,
Darren Gill, tell us, what is Bill C-93?
So Bill C-93 is the bill that I think a lot of folks have been waiting for. It's the one that will allow us to expedite the pardon process for anybody that's been charged historically with small amounts of cannabis possession in the past. We're moving towards an age now where it's legalized and regulated, and one of the big things that the government's had to get through was how are they going to deal with all these people that had minor charges for in some cases having medication on them, and so Bill C-93 addresses all that entire process.
Wow. So, and this is a really big sort of topic here, because I can only imagine that someone who would have been arrested years and years and years ago for something that is now legal must be very frustrating. So are there pros to, let's start with the pros. What are the pros?
Well, I think, a little bit of background, I guess, on the bill is, so this Monday, we passed voted on 11 amendments to the bill that have been that are going to now go back into the House for review. So what they're looking at doing is basically trying to, anyone who's been previously charged with less than 30 grams of possession in the past will be allowed to apply for an immediate suspension of their record, or what we commonly refer to as a pardon. And the normal process for this, after you've had a conviction on your record, it's actually 5 years that you've got to wait before you can even apply for the process. And you've got to make sure that all of your fees and everything are paid. Any sentence, prison time or community service has been served out. And there's a $631 application fee to go through the process. And, for a lot of people, that's a significant amount of money.
Yep.
And so the amendments that they proposed into the bill now are they're going to actually, they'll waive the fee for the application process. If people have outstanding fines left for cannabis possession charges, they're going to allow them to go ahead and still apply for the pardon process, and they're going to remove the 5-year wait requirement as well. So as soon as the bill gets passed, you'll be able to apply right away. And then obviously with pardons and kind of legal framework, things get a little bit complicated. So what they did was they also tried to close off a lot of the loopholes of having a past pardon potentially impact future situations for you or other pardons you may be applying for.
And do you think that this is a bit too tough of a process for people to apply for pardons? Should it be made easier, do you feel?
I think that's what they're trying to do by opening this up. There's obviously on both sides of the political spectrum, there's different views on it. And, I know folks from the NDP and other parties are pushing, I'll say, a much more streamlined process. So under the current process right now, rather than have the parole board proactively go look at cases where people have had cannabis charges and pardon them, they're forcing people to go apply through the process, hence creating another hoop to jump through. And, the views from some politicians are, if these charges are on record, why not be proactive about it and help folks get through the process a little bit faster? And then the other view on this from a lot of folks is, at the end of the day, a pardon, it doesn't remove this from my record. It's still going to be there. And so, what a lot of folks are pushing for is why not have a complete expungement? Because now, even with a pardon, going to the U.S. in the future may wind up causing you problems trying to get through any, other border-type situations where they'll look and see that still exists on your record.
And Darren, can you, being the chief strategist over at Namaste Technologies, are you allowed as a, company having an official sort of view on this and what you feel is fair, or do you guys just kind of choose to report the news?
I think, we'll generally choose to report the news. I mean, I've said this on other topics you and I have spoken about as well, is it's small strides. At the end of the day, we see them starting to do things to move in the right direction. And it's not going to be perfect. This is going to be an evolutionary process. There's definitely things that I'm personally not a fan of in the current cannabis regulations. But, I think through the right amount of lobbying, through feedback from people, it'll get there. We've got a lot in the way of industry events, industry associations. There's some really good channels for folks to provide their feedback. And I think that ongoing education is what's going to drive us forward.
Without a doubt, education being the most important thing. I just guess for me personally, I can understand that, if you're doing some serious drug trafficking in the day, I can understand why you would have been arrested. And to be honest, I will say, even if you were just kind of smoking a joint, even if it was illegal, I guess I can understand why you were being arrested, because it was deemed illegal. I just hope that the government, and it seems like they're doing it through this Bill C-93, and it's nice to learn it from you, Darren, that they're making efforts to start to pardon, and I would hope that they could maybe wipe it away from the records now. But I will say, in the past, if you did it, you kind of reap what you sowed, I think, because that this thing was illegal. And the one thing, though, through history and stuff I've read, and I don't know if this has happened more in the States, say, than Canada. I don't have the true statistics on it, but it's the targeted stuff that I can't I can't even stomach or handle. That maybe there was targeting certain races in terms of pot possession and things like that, and how it affected people's lives. And I just really hope that most people get those lives back somehow, if you can ever do so, and be able to travel to different countries and all this kind of stuff. So I'm hoping for the best for all this, and that's what legalization, you're right, in small strides, really seems to be trying to accomplish. Is that fair?
No, I think a lot of it comes down to ending the stigma that's been associated with this, like you talked about, the stereotyping, the profiling, every teenager in a back alley is a pothead now. Those types of things are the narratives that it's changed. And I think the other thing that we're noticing is, with legalization, because this is one of the benefits of legalizing anything, you take the taboo away from it. A lot of folks did it because it was the it thing or the cool thing to do. Now you can order it online. You can go down to your local dispensary and buy the stuff. So the more mainstream you make it, I think you get better control over it, and you take away the folks that I'll say wanted to do it to fit in or be cool.
Here in Ontario right now, Darren, we're seeing the Ford government start to talk about, hey, let's get beer in corner stores. And we've obviously seen that in other provinces within the country, Quebec, I believe in Alberta. I'm actually not quite sure how it is in British Columbia, where you are most of the time. But do you think, like, even 10, 15 years down the road, maybe even sooner, there might be a more accessible way to get cannabis?
I would certainly hope so. I mean, I can go down to the gas station and buy cigarettes, and my personal belief is cigarettes are a lot more damaging than smoking a joint. And so why not improve that accessibility, that experience for folks? And I think as it becomes more mainstream and understood, hopefully we start to see a shift that way.
We heard some statistics from one of our other guests from bovadainc.com just earlier this week, actually, that talked about the cannabis sales in Canada and that they were actually doing very well, the legal cannabis sales through all the different legal measures, which was sort of a shock in a way because they weren't the same. And this is what we learned from the individual in terms of being in Colorado and in California, where the states that had it legal. Is that something that is very encouraging to the way the rollout has happened?
I think it's definitely encouraging to the way the rollouts happened. I think, we also had a lot more of a accepting culture. A lot of folks that I think have spent years of their lives fighting for this to be legalized. And for those folks, I think, at the end of the day, if you fought so hard to get something legalized, why would you continue to buy from the same illicit channels that you had to go to when you didn't have a choice? I think that's driven a lot of that behavior. And I think ultimately, as I've said on other segments with you, as we bring more of the product portfolio in, and especially with what's going to happen in October with concentrates, edibles, and so on, you're going to start to see more and more pressure put on that black market. And hopefully the government stepping up and actually shutting down more and more of these illicit operations. Because now there really is no excuse. There's nothing you should be able to get there that you couldn't then get in the legal channel.
How careful are companies such as Namaste Technologies to ensure a lot of the online shopping is very safe, secure, and obviously very legal in terms of age? Because, is there a lot of, I would imagine there has to be a lot of measures in place for that, for compliance.
No, absolutely. So our websites are age gated. You need to have a verified profile to get in. Us in particular, through our LP CanMart, we serve medical patients, so you actually have to go through a full medical interview with a nurse practitioner where they will, look at your kind of medical history, see how cannabis can actually be used to treat you, and they'll make recommendations to you in terms of what the dosage levels are, and then we'll help bring you in, make sure that product gets to you in a safe, secure manner. We much like every LP, make sure that our supply chain is very, very secure and that there's no way that product's ever been tampered with or anything like that.
And are there confusion for some of your, say, CanMart patients who go through the medical route to the legal route? Is there still a lot of kind of confusion for a medical patient to say, hey, should I stick with this medical claim that I have? And if so, why? What would the benefits be?
I think some of the benefits wind up being that, especially if you are using it for medical purposes, that you're getting that medical professional interaction. That they're able to monitor the benefits. You're able to get regular follow-ups from a nurse practitioner who will actually call to make sure you're doing okay. And I think ultimately this is a medical product. As we look into the future, more and more insurance companies and so on are starting to jump online. For a lot of folks, I remember from my days in professional services, we used to have wellness accounts. And if you're using this as a therapeutic product, it's covered by some folks' employment benefits. I think as the industry evolves, and especially as we get into more pharmaceutical grade cannabis with things like DIN numbers, where you can actually get a doctor to write you a prescription for a specific treatment of cannabis, you'll see more and more of this medical coverage portion start to kick in, which I think will benefit a lot of folks.
Are numbers of medical patients increasing since legalization or decreasing, Darren?
The trends that I've seen are there has been a slowdown because obviously there is a rec market available, but the numbers have continued to climb. I think the last reference I have is from a website called Statistica, where they were still showing the market growing for the next few years.
And and I guess through education are more we people learn one way or the other, but are more is your feeling anyway that more doctors are starting to actually go, hey, maybe instead of prescribing this drug that ultimately I think is going to kill you one day, and that is proven a lot of the big pharma drugs and the addictions and the overdoses and the crazy, scary stuff that happens. Maybe me, old school doctor, might even consider prescribing cannabis. Are we seeing more positive attitudes in the space?
I'll say generally, I think, yes, we are. And actually, a funny story around that is, as you referenced earlier, I just had a child. And so, my wife was going in for her maternity visits, and her maternity doctor asked me what I did for a living. We got to talking about my work and the cannabis industry. And lo and behold, he delivers babies all day, but he's a pro-cannabis doctor, very what you would perceive to be an old school gentleman. But, him and I wound up having a fantastic conversation about it, and he's an advocate for it.
Well, yeah, and I imagine what kind of education do you know that where do doctors get the information to know to become able to, I guess, prescribe cannabis one day to a medical patient?
I think for doctors to be able to do it, we're going to need a lot more of the research and the scientific data to start coming out. And, unfortunately, clinical trials and trials for this type of stuff are done in years, not in weeks and in months. And so I think that's where the adoption on that medical side has been a little bit slower. But, LPs, private sector, industry folks are putting money into doing some of these clinical research trials. Israel's become a massive hub for doing clinical research on cannabis. And, I think that soon here we'll get to a point where there's enough data to actually start making claims. Today, people have some ideas around what cannabis can treat, but defendable claims that are backed by science and the medical profession, I think, is what's really needed to move it forward.
Darren Gill is joining us from Namaste Technologies, namastetechnologies.com. And this is sort of my favorite part about talking to you on air and coming to speak to the listeners here is really, education. And some might not know that there still is a lot to be done in terms of the science, in terms of the studying, in terms of the effects, in terms of the contraindications. And it's good to know that we are taking that responsibility to discover this stuff. And that's why, again, I think legalization is so important as opposed to the black market, because this way we'll at least have some results down the road, and we're learning all together. But the purpose of it is to learn. Is there a big responsibility and onus on LPs and on companies such as yourselves at Namaste Technologies to ensure that obviously we really understand this drug?
Yeah, there definitely is. I think folks in industry are looking to try to find ways of backing up some of the things that we believe are the stories that we've heard. I think everybody's got a story around how CBD or cannabis has helped someone in their lives. And at the end of the day, there's 113 different cannabinoids within the plant. We today have a good understanding of two of them, being THC and CBD. I think as they work to explore the rest of the plant and look at, as extraction technology gets better, the different types of formulations we can come up with, they'll actually be able to do targeted extractions and look at targeted effects on a lot of different things to see how this plant can ultimately, hopefully replace some of this mainstream medication.
Darren Gill from Namaste Technologies. Maybe my most important question of the day, you being in Vancouver, are you allowed to cheer for the Raptors?
Definitely am, and definitely will be.
You guys lost a team and all, right? That's all I'm saying.
Well, I also hear the rumor mill has it we're getting one back.
Whoa, well, I hope so. I really do, because basketball in Canada is so strong from coast to coast. And what a special time right now for everyone involved. And you've been in Vancouver. It's cool to know you're going to root for the Raptors until you get another team. And thank you so much for the call, for all the information. NamasteTechnologies.com and Darren Gill, their chief strategist. Dude, I love chatting with you. Thanks for all the information.
Thanks a lot, Todd. Really appreciate it.
Okay, go Raps go, you're supposed to say to me now, like I'm going to the game here in a minute.
Raps, go.
Okay, brother. Thank you again, and look forward to catching up next week.
Take care.
Cheers, man.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.